or Mac. So this is where you would end up downloading RStudio if you have a Windows machine, and this is where you'd download it if you had a Mac. So seeing no questions in the chat, maybe I will just start by going through some of the information in the workshop. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I will watch the chat closely to see if there are any questions there. If I am talking too quickly, or if I say something that you don't quite understand or don't quite hear, please ask me to clarify in the chat. I know that R has a lot of very specific terminology to it, so that people who are new to statistics, people who are new to coding, there may be things that I say that I don't even realize are, confusing. So, so here are the materials, and I will put this link to the materials in the chat in case you didn't get a chance to go look at them. So that link is in the chat. The first part is just a little bit of information about how, about what R is. And yeah, I have one question in the chat asking whether this workshop will be certified. If you complete the 2 activities, or even just one of the 2 activities, and you submit it through the form, and I'll show you that link in a minute, you will get a certificate. So I'm not sure if that's what's meant by certified, but yes, you'd be able to get a certificate if you like, but you'll have to do some of the exercises and submit that through the form. So I'll show you where that link is to submit in a minute here. So a great reason to use R is that it can do everything that SPSS and SAS can do. And sometimes it can do more, especially in the area of data visualization. So if you are working for a company, or if you are going to school, if you're doing really anything that requires you to make graphs or do statistical analysis, you could use R, and it would provide the benefit for you of being free, and also of just being able to do anything that these 2 others can do. Plus, there is a huge community of people on Twitter who are very, very active in R, and who will answer your questions, often very quickly if you have questions, and you can tweet to those people and get to know who they are, and get involved in the R community by using the hashtag #RStats. And I will put that in the chat right now in case you want to try it out. So if you have a Twitter account and you're tweeting about R, you can use the hashtag #RStats, and people in the R community will see your tweet. And if it has a question in it, often you'll get a number of responses from different people. So the workshop itself that is described here has 4 parts. The first part is installing R and RStudio. Hopefully you've had the chance to do that already, but if you haven't, that's okay. You have plenty of time. The second part is a short video, and I'll go over the information in that video in a few minutes here, that shows you the features of RStudio. So this will be a new software to a lot of people who are in this boot camp. And so this short video will just show you the different features and the different things to expect when you open RStudio for the first time. The third part is what I think is really exciting, but most people will find this very boring, importing and cleaning data in R. And the last part will be creating basic tables and figures in R. That's a great question in the chat, talking about packages. I will definitely do that in just a minute. I'll go through the rest of these instructions, and then we'll open up R, and I will talk a little bit about packages. So this next spot is all the information for installing R and RStudio. So these are the step-by-step instructions. RStudio, I guess a few people had trouble with, but hopefully if there was any problem with that website, you're able to use it now. And then there's a short video on YouTube that you can get to by clicking this link. It'll talk about the different parts of the RStudio interface. The third step is to download some files, and this first section shows you how to download those files, and then you can watch this video and follow along with it to actually practice some data analysis in those data files. And then there are slides here at this link, and here is another video for watching for basic tables and figures with the slides as well. Here's the certificate of participation information. If you do either one of these files by April 2nd, you can submit your file through this form, and I will send all the names of people who submitted a file to the Academic Hive, and they will email you a certificate showing that you participated in the R workshop. If you like R, or even if you hate R, which I hope nobody hates R, but even if you don't like R and you need to use it somehow for your job or your school or whatever, there are so many places online to get help and to find tutorials. You can Google R tutorial about regression and you'll get a bunch of different ones from different sources. So here are a few that I really love, and you can try any of these when we're done. Juliet says that nobody hates R. I don't know. I hope she's right. I should always listen to Juliet, though. She's usually right. So I'm going to go ahead now and open RStudio, and then I'm going to go through a little bit of the stuff from the workshop for you. Before I do that, I'm going to put 3 files in the chat, and these are from this step 4 part, the creating basic tables and figures in R. So we're going to skip over some of this other stuff because you know, it's not as exciting, it's not as fun. So I'm going to save that for you to do on your own, and we'll do some more fun stuff here. So I'll put 3 files in the chat right now. And if you've already downloaded the files for this workshop, you can just use those. But if you haven't, this might be a little faster. It's just getting them out of the chat. So let me find them for you. There's one. And let's see. There's 2. And the second one, the data file, is going to be pretty big. So if you're having trouble downloading it from the chat, you may have to follow these instructions under step 3 to actually download that data file. It may be a little too big to get out of the chat, I'm not sure. So hopefully that works for everyone. They're still uploading from my computer, and there, it looks like you should have 3 files in your chat that you can download. And what you'll need to do is put these files all together into one folder. So if they're not in the same folder, the code won't run properly. The first file, the participant part 2 file, is a code file, and it's going to look for the data. And the second file that says Pew Research Center, that's the data. So those 2 files have to be in the same folder for the code to run properly, because it's going to be looking for that data set to be able to run. So I want to, maybe I'll talk about packages for a second while everybody's making sure they have those 2 files. When you have the participant part 2 file and the Pew Research Center data file, both saved on your computer and in one folder, can you give me a thumbs up so that I know that people are ready to go? And in the meantime, I'll talk a little bit about packages. Somebody had asked earlier about packages. Great. So packages are small pieces of R software that can be used to do different sorts of analysis. And packages are one of the really cool things about R, because they can be written by anybody in the world. I have 2 packages that can be used in R. They are all uploaded to this thing called the CRAN. Let's see, I can't remember what CRAN stands for, but I'll put the acronym in the chat, CRAN, if you want to look it up. They're all uploaded to the CRAN, and so anybody who has R can install them from the CRAN. You do have to be online to install a package for the first time, but once you have it installed, you do not have to be online to use it. So when you're installing packages, you'll need an internet connection, but to actually just use R to do work after you've installed packages, you don't have to be online. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah, okay. So another question was, when I installed the 3 packages, I received an error message. R tools is required to build R packages. Sometimes you get a message that's not really an error, it's just a warning. And if everything works, don't worry about it. If it's truly an error, things are gonna just stop working. So R is a little finicky. As long as things are working okay, you can consider a lot of those messages that you get that are in like bright red text to try and scare you. You can consider a lot of those sort of warnings, like R is saying, you know, look, you have an old version of something, or you don't have this other thing that you might need. And so I wouldn't worry about it unless what you're trying to do actually fails to load. Thanks. So look, Juliet has found the comprehensive R archive network. So that's where all the packages live. They all sit on the comprehensive R archive network. So if you start to love R and you find that there is something that R cannot do, you can write a package to do that thing, put it together, submit it to the CRAN, this comprehensive R archive network, and they will review it to make sure it works. And then they will put it on the CRAN, and then anybody all over the world who uses R can download your package and use it. So it's really nice open source software. People are very passionate about R, as you might be able to tell, because it can be used by everyone, and contributed to by everyone. So, you know, it helps to democratize science a little bit. And we really need that. So I know I saw a few thumbs up. Can everybody do that one more time? Give me a thumbs up if you've got the files. I don't know how many I saw. All right, great, cool. All right, I've got at least some, so I'm gonna start slowly. I'm gonna stop sharing this screen and start sharing my RStudio screen. So as soon as you have the files downloaded and are able to access them, go ahead and open RStudio, and we will start working together to look at the features of RStudio and get into the slides. So let's see. RStudio, where is it? There it is. All right, and every time I share something new, I lose the chat, so I have to go back and look at it. Great. Okay, so a few people are still downloading, and we have a few people who are ready. So even if you're still downloading the data, as long as you have RStudio, you can follow along with this first part, because I'm just going to go through the different parts of RStudio, what they're used for, how they work. We'll do that first. So if you have RStudio installed, go ahead and open it, and you should see something like this. It may look a tiny bit different in this lower right-hand corner. If you have, you know, the first time you opened it, it might default to something else. Mine defaults to plots. So what this is, what you're looking at, and I have a Mac, so yours will, if you have a PC, if you have a Windows machine, you will also see up in the upper left-hand corner, you will also see a set of menus that you can use. But for me with a Mac, that's kind of separate up above on my monitor. So you don't see it in my window here, but it's there. It's got all those different menus. It's got the file menu, the edit menu, the code menu, the view menu, all those menus are there. The main part of the RStudio window, though, is this. And this is called a window, like I just said. And each of these parts of the window is called a pane, P-A-N-E. Not pain, P-A-I-N, which is what you experience when your analysis won't work. So this is a window with 3 panes right now. R is running in the left-hand pane. The version of R that I have, and that most of you probably have if you just downloaded it for this workshop, is version 4.0.4. And each version has its own name. There's some sort of story behind the naming, but I don't know the story. So this version is called Lost Library Book. And then you just get all this information about R. You know, I have a 64-bit Apple, so this is the version that I have installed. R is free and comes with no warranty. So that is one of the downfalls. If for SPSS or SAS, if your software breaks, you can contact them. With R, it's not, there's no big company behind this software. So you would have to just go to Twitter or go to the RStudio group and see if they can help you if you have a major problem. I have found the R community to be extraordinarily helpful. So this has never been a problem for me. I don't think any of the rest of this is a big deal to look at. Just know that in this corner, this side of your window, in this pane is where R is running. In this top corner, we've got a bunch of different great things. So we have the environment, and as we load data in, as you create new variables, if you create any new functions, they're all going to show up in the environment. Right now, the environment is empty because I just started R, so I haven't loaded any data or anything like that yet. But you'll see things here, and this is a good way to keep track of what you've opened already and what you're going to use, what you have available to use in the current R session that you're in. The history, and mine is going to look different than yours because I've been testing all this code and data for our workshop today. The history has all of the R commands that you have run, starting from the last time you cleaned it up to now. And the great thing about the history tab is that if you run something and it works perfectly, and then you just decide to change one little thing and it breaks your code and it won't run anymore, if you forget what you changed, like if you don't remember if you added a comma or you added a quote mark or you changed the variable type, you can go back into this history and you can see what you've run and you can get that piece of code and run it again. So you've always got a history of what you've done, and you can get code to go over into R by just using this button right here to console. It'll send it over there and you can then run it again. I'm not going to run this particular piece of code because that's something from our workshop and it won't work right now anyway. If you want to clean that up, if you've got a history like mine that just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and keeps going, you can use this little broom. Anytime you see a little broom like that in RStudio, it's going to clear everything in that pane if you hit it. So I'll go ahead and clear that. It asks me if I'm sure. I say yes, and all my history is gone. So hopefully I didn't just make things harder for myself, but it's good to know this little broom exists, and you can see it in some of these other windows as well. There's a little broom over there, broom here. That's going to be to clean it up. And then tutorial. If you want to find some more tutorials on how to use R, this is a good place to go. I also listed several on the workshop instructions for you. So lots and lots of places to get more education in R if you decide this is something you want to continue to learn. All right, so how's everyone doing? Anybody still need some time to get the data downloaded? you need some more time, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, seeing no messages, I'm just going to forge ahead. And I believe that a lot of this is available to you outside this workshop. I certainly am available to you on Twitter or via email if you have trouble after we're done here. But what I'm going to do now is open the participant part 2 document that was in the chat, or you might have downloaded it from the instructions. So you can do that in a couple of ways. You can go find it and double click on it, or you can go in your RStudio up to the file menu and hit open file. And then you'll have to just find it. For me, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I have a lot of files on my computer. So what's going to open up is something like this. And at the top, it'll say Introduction to R. It'll say create basic tables and figures in R, HTML output. We're not really going to deal with the output today, but this first little section, that should just stay the way it is. That's part of this file type, and you shouldn't add anything to that really until you learn a little bit more about these kinds of files. This kind of a file is called an R Markdown file. And it's really amazing for pretty much whatever you want to do in R. You can use Markdown files to create slides. So all those slides that I had for you to click on, those were created in a file like this. You can use it to create manuscripts, reports, posters, you know, assignments, whatever you need to do. You can create them in R Markdown files. And the reason they're so great is because they allow you to put together text like you would type in Microsoft Word, and R code and R output. So you can see here that there seem to be 2 different colors going on for my background. There's the regular white color, and then there's the gray shaded color. So this stuff is all the background to it looks gray. I'm not sure how well you can see that on your monitor, but hopefully if you have RStudio open, it's more clear in your RStudio. What is the file I'm working on called again? Participant part 2. It's, you can see it up here in the left-hand corner, participant part 2.rmd. And I can put that in the chat again. There you go. So this is an R Markdown file, and it allows you to put text and code in the same file. You can see anything in the gray background, that is R code. So that is something R is going to recognize as being code for doing some statistical process, or opening a package, or making a graph, or calculating a mean, something like that. That's going to be in these gray parts. And these gray parts are denoted by 3 backticks at the top and 3 at the bottom. And then in some curly braces, the letter R. And then you can give the chunk, this is called a code chunk. You can give the chunk a name. So I put names in here so that when we're working together today, I can refer to that as chunk 1 or chunk 2. So this is a code chunk. And then anything outside that, anything outside the gray, is just regular old text. So if you wanted to, while we're working together, you could come in here and you could just type some notes about R and what we're doing. You know, put information in here that you don't want to forget. And R will not break for that. This white background part is great for adding whatever you want as notes around your code. And if you add that in, you can just hit the save button and it'll save it. And when you open it again, your notes will be in there ready to go as you wrote them. So these files are really nice for integrating text and code together. So let's see, what should we do next? Let's just go ahead and we'll run this first bit of code, but before we do, you'll need to have all of these packages installed. And that is done by going to the Tools menu at the very top. So I'll put this in the chat, go to Tools, and then hit Install Packages within the Tools menu. I know you can't see that on my screen, so, but you should be able to see this little window that pops up when I hit Tools, Install Packages. And I'm going to install those little pieces of our software that we're going to use today in this window. So here's one package we're going to use. Tidyverse is another package we're going to use. Haven and Table 1. And I'll talk about what each of these packages does after we install them. So before you use a package for the very first time, you have to install it. But once you have it installed, you don't have to install it again. You just have to install it once. And you can think about that. It's really similar to having something on your computer. Like I installed Microsoft Word when I got my computer and I've never installed it again. I can open it anytime, I can use it anytime, but I just installed it once. So what you're doing right now with the install packages, you only have to do one time for each package that you want to install. So I'm going to go ahead and hit install. And you're going to see maybe down here in this pane a whole bunch of stuff happening. Yours may go faster or slower depending on you know, what kind of an internet connection you have today. You do need internet to be able to install those packages. I can go up now to my history and I can see install packages. So that's a little bit of R code that I just ran, and R wrote that code for me. I didn't have to write it. I could have written it if I'd wanted to, but I usually go through the menu to do the install packages because you only have to do it once. You don't need to have it in your code. All right, do we have any questions from anyone while I just want to pause for a second in case people's internet connections are slow at all for installing packages? Anybody have questions on what we've done so far? Okay. Hearing none, seeing none, I will forge forward. How do you start to write a fresh code? Oh, so yeah, good question. So how do you start to write fresh code? There are two different files that you can write new code in. To get a new file to write code in, you can go up to the File menu, choose New File, and if you just want R code by itself without text around it, you would choose R script. I'll put that in the chat, script. And then if you want a new R Markdown file, you go to File, New File, and choose R Markdown. So which is the type of file we're using right now, R Markdown. So File, File to New File. That's how you would start a new fresh code. So when analyzing data, how do we know what package to install? That is a fantastic question. Usually when you're new to R, you're probably going to have to look it up. A lot of basic analyses are just ready to go in the base R, what's called base R, which is what installs with R. So lots of simple things like taking the mean, doing a basic regression model. You don't need any extra packages for that. But if you want to do fancy stuff like the graphs we're going to do today, then you had to install packages like Tidyverse. And the only way to know that is probably by doing a little research. Like if you go to one of the websites, you want to make a bar graph and you want to make it look fancy. If you Google, it's going to tell you the package you need is Tidyverse. Or if you Google and what you get is you need to use this particular function, like ggplot2, like ggplot, we're going to use today, you can come over here in the help documentation. And if you find that particular function, like yesterday, I was looking at this function called ergum. When I put it in here, I hit return, it came up with this. And this tells me in the parentheses here that it's in the package ergum. So I know then that I have to install the ergum package. So you'll start to get to know the packages if you use it. I would say Tidyverse is the package you're mostly going to use. Here is a package that helps you find your data on your computer. So these two packages, when you're first starting out, are probably going to be the main two that you use. Haven, I'm going to use today. Haven brings in data from SPSS. And I learned that by Googling, how do I bring in data from SPSS? And it said something like you use the Haven package. All right, somebody's having trouble downloading the package. So make sure you have everything typed correctly. So for like table 1, there's no space in it at all. Tidyverse, also no spaces. They have to have a comma between them. If you're having trouble doing them all at once, I would suggest doing one at a time. So Tidyverse, you can do alone and hit install, and then go back through the install packages menu to try the others. So the first two we're going to use are here and Haven. This one helps us find our data. This one helps us bring in SPSS data. And then after that, we're going to use Tidyverse and Table 1. So if you're following along and you're having trouble, I'd try installing here. And then once that's done, try installing Haven. And once that's done, Tidyverse, and then Table 1. So is that working? Ms. Grace, are you able to download any of the packages? Yeah. Okay. I'll keep going here for another 10 or 15 minutes or so, and then I will stop with this part, and I will maybe I'll be able to help some individuals troubleshoot their problems individually. For me, usually it's because either I don't have the right permission on my computer, if you're working on a work computer, or the most common thing for me is typo. I just spelled something wrong. I do it all the time, several times a day. I'm not sure why, but I think, we type so much right now, we're online constantly, that it's hard to type everything perfectly. So, all right, so if you were able to install the packages okay, you should be able to then run this code to open them. Library is the way you open a package. So when you open RStudio again at any time, you'll have to open the packages again that you want to use. So they're installed only once, but every time you open a new RStudio document, you have to open the packages. You don't have to open them multiple times each day. You just have to open them whenever you open an R file. So they're not open when you first open this participant file, but so you have to open them. And the way you do that is using the library function and then giving the name of the package. I've got all 4 packages here. I can run them one at a time if I want by highlighting it and hitting run the selected line. Or I can run everything in this code chunk all together by hitting this little tiny green arrow in the top right corner. So if you hit that, it should run all of them. And it's going to give you a bunch of warnings again, like it's trying to be helpful, telling you what packages it's attaching, maybe if there's any conflicts in the packages. So I would not worry about any of this. It's just sort of R trying to be helpful and giving you a little more information. whoever wrote these packages thought that this would be useful output for you to have when you use these packages. When you're using this stuff for the first time, it just looks confusing and overwhelming. So I would just skip it, just hit that little X and get rid of it. As long as things start working okay, it will be fine. So one way to tell if your package is opened okay is to go down to this right-hand corner and click on packages. And then you can type the name of the package like here, and you can see that you have the here package, and if it's got a little check mark, that means it's open. So, you know, you have the here mark and package installed, and this check mark means you've opened it for this particular R session that we're doing right now. You can check tidyverse. That's also open. It's got the little check mark right here. I can check Haven, also open. This tells you a little bit import and export SPSS data and SAS files. So if you work with any of those types of files, if you find some data online you want to use and it's in a SAS file format, you can use Haven to import it into R and open it in R. R is really great that way. So some of these other statistical packages, it takes a lot of work to import data that's in another format. But in R, it's only a process of finding the right package to do it. And then table 1. I have that here, and I've got table 1. Okay, so we're about to start our first R coding. So before I do that, I want to pause and see if anyone has questions or comments, things you want me to point out on the screen to help you with. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in the data. And if you want to watch the magic happen, you can open your environment tab up here in case you might be in history. If you were looking at your history like I was, you can have your environment tab open and notice that right now it's empty. We don't have any data open. We don't have any new functions we've written. We don't have anything we've created that's up here in the environment. So what we're going to do is fill that environment with some data now. So the here function is really nice. It makes R look into the same folder that your R Markdown file is in to find your data. It used to be, as recently as 6 months ago, you would have to write the whole file path of wherever your data were saved. And sometimes even then, R couldn't find your data. So it's gotten a lot easier in the last 6 months to be able to import data. You don't have to know exactly the full file path. It doesn't change from computer to computer as long as it's in the same folder with your Markdown file, with your R script file. Here will help you find it. So we'll use that first to tell R, look in this folder. And then what we're going to do is use this function from the Haven package called read_SPSS. So this file is an SPSS file that we're reading. This is the name of the file. I downloaded it directly from the Pew Research Center. I did not change a thing. I did not change the name of the file. I did not change how messy the data were, nothing. So this is directly from the internet to your computer, directly from the Pew Research Center onto your computer. So here's the function we're using. Here's the name of the file we're trying to open. This is the argument. This is optional, but I always use the arguments because sometimes your R functions can get confusing and have lots of arguments. And so knowing which ones you're using is helpful. So this is going to happen. And when this happens, when we read this SPSS file called Pew Research Center Global Attitudes, we need to save it somewhere so that we can use it while we're in R. And so to do that, we're going to assign it using what's called an assignment arrow. And that's important, so I'm going to write it in the chat. It's called an assignment arrow. And we're going to assign this file that we've read a new name. We're going to give it this name, Global Data 2019. So when we run this code, what we're going to see pop up over here in the environment is the name that we're giving this file. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's just do run the whole code chunk. Make sure that you've got your data saved and you didn't accidentally change the name by adding a 2 or deleting the file extension or anything. You might check that first. But once you know that you've got your data saved in the same folder with your participant file, go ahead and hit little arrow. And this will take a second because that's kind of a big data file. But once you've read it, you should see up here in the environment that your data are there. And it's named what you named it. It's Global Data 2019, Global Data 2019. So this is a data set that Pew collected in 2019 from, I don't know, 30 or 40 countries around the world. And it has a lot of people in it. It has 38,426 people. So OBS stands for observations. In this case, they're each individual people. And it's got 607 variables. So this is a huge data set. So this might not be, if you're used to working in Excel or you're used to working in SPSS, this might not be what you're used to seeing when, or thinking of when you, open your data. You're used to seeing kind of a spreadsheet maybe with a person on each row and the variables in the columns. And so if that's the format that you're used to, you can get that by just clicking one time. You don't have to double click. I think that might do it twice. Clicking once on the name of the data, and that will open a window over here that should look more like what you would expect to see in Excel. So it's got the names of the variables across the top. It's got the participants, all their information. You can scroll across and see all the different variables. You can use these little arrows to, put this in order by country. So country 34, so it's alphabetical descending or ascending. These little arrows help you do that. And so everything that's in this data set, you can see here. You can't really do much here other than click on those little arrows and kind of just look through it. You can try and find things with this. Like there's a variable we're going to use today, I think, called econ. Let's see if we can find it this way. Nope. So I haven't really had much luck with this little search box. Maybe you will, I don't know. But I'm gonna close that because it gave me a little arrow, message. So it's still there if I want to see it. Maybe it's not. I'm gonna reopen my data. And as you can see, sometimes R is a little persnickety. It gives even people who've used it for 10 years and love it so much, it still doesn't love me back. It still gives me errors. But here's your data and you can take a look at it. I would avoid using this. It's never been very helpful for me. I should probably watch a tutorial on how people use this because it's probably helpful for someone. I'll go ahead and close that and we'll just go back to our participant file. If you've made any changes, like you've added some notes about what the code did, you might go ahead and just hit save. I'm not going to hit save just now. Okay, so hopefully everybody's able to get their data in and they have some observations, variables. Let's do just a couple more little code chunks so that you get to see something fun, and then I will stop with this and just take questions for the last 10 minutes or so. This participant file is the second one. So the first one brought in the same data set and did data cleaning. So putting labels on variables, selecting certain variables so that you didn't have to work with 607 of them, selecting certain people so you didn't have to work with 38,000 of them. And this is the code that you end up with at the very end of the previous video. So the part 1 code. I just gave it to you here because I want to work on a couple other things in this data set. So I'm not going to go through everything that this code is doing. You can watch the first video to see that and go through that first file. I'm just going to run this code chunk. So if you're caught up with what we're doing and everything's working okay for you, go ahead and run code chunk 3. And that should give you a new data set over here. We called the new data set Global Data 2019 Clean. So once you do all this data cleaning, adding labels, adding missing values and all that kind of stuff, you might want to give your data a new name, and you can see it now over here in the environment. This has 995 observations and 8 variables in it. So if I want to look at that, I can click on it and look at that. And you'll notice that maybe it's a little more easy to handle because I now have limited it to, you know, a smaller number of people and a smaller number of variables. So it's got participant sex, it's got participant age. There's a question in the survey about, in my country, whose lives are better, men, women, or the same. It's got all these different questions in it. So you can look through that if you want to. That third file that I gave you is the code book, and you can see a little bit more about all these questions that have been asked. Okay, so the last thing I think is, last 2 things, I'm going to do 2 more little things here, is to look at a summary of the data. So often you'll want to kind of check your work and just make sure that you've recoded everything okay and it looks pretty good. So you can do that by using the summary function. And it's got an argument called object. Anything you see over here under data is considered by R to be an object. So whoever wrote this function used that terminology. And then I want to see my global data 2019 clean object. So this one here. So if I click on the arrow, it's going to give me a little output here that tells me about each of these variables. This first one is the sex variable. 572 people who answered this survey said they were male. 423 who answered the survey said they were female. The second variable I kept was called age. Age is more of a continuous kind of a variable, so people just give you how many years old they are. The minimum value of age, somebody was 18 years old, the maximum value of age was 92. You can see that you've got the mean, the median, some quartiles if you like working with quartiles. And then you've got down at the bottom something called NA. This is R's code for missing value. It's not available. And so there's one person who didn't give their age. Yeah, that's a good idea, Michael, if it's been recorded. Maybe Juliet can facilitate that. A lot of this stuff is also in the 2 videos that are on YouTube. So you can watch those videos as well. They should include almost all the same stuff. This variable.
Sorry, Jen.
Go ahead.
The video will be recorded and put up on our Academic Hive YouTube channel. So you just do to subscribe to the channel as well, so you get the recording of this video.
Great, thank you. So you can record to, you can subscribe to Academic Hive and you'll get to access to this video, or you can watch the 2 videos on the instructions, and they should have all the same information. So this variable has 448 men as answers, women. This is the one about, you know, who in this country has a better life, men, women, or the same, both equally. So 33 people did not want to answer this question. They were like, I am not getting in that, I'm not opening that can of worms, or whatever. They thought maybe the survey was too long, who knows. But 448 people thought men had an easier life, 231 had thought women, and 283 thought both had same easy life. Here's a country satisfaction. 189 people were satisfied with the way their country is going, 800 were dissatisfied, and so on. So these are the 8 variables that are left in the data set after you did all that data cleaning in the first video, in the first file. So this is nice, but you don't want to put this in a report. It looks ugly. It's great for like understanding whether you did your data management right. It's great for understanding which variables are in your data, but it is not great for sharing this information with somebody else. When you share information like this, you want it in a well-formatted table. And one of the great things about R is it makes that super easy. You do not have to cut and paste each of these values into your Microsoft Word document or into Excel to make a table. You can just use this function called table1. Put a little tilde to get started. I'm not sure why that is, but whoever programmed this added the tilde in. And then pick the variables you want in your table. I want the sex variable, the age variable, and the better gender variable. Tell R which data set you're using, because see, you have 2 open now, so it doesn't know which one to get those variables from. So you have to tell it data equals, I want the global clean data, the global 2019 clean data. And when you run that, you're going to get this really nice little table that you can just put in a document. If you want to see that bigger, you can hit this little thing right here. I'm not sure if you can see the window that opened for me, but you can see a bigger version of that. And you can just copy that into a document if you'd like, or you can create your document entirely in our Markdown once you get used to it a little more. Let's see, if you want to add labels, you know, this is great, this better underscore gender. This is probably something, sex is probably something everybody would know what that means. This is something everybody would know what it means. Yeah, finally we get to something exciting, right? In the last 2 minutes, somebody wrote that the table is nice. But yeah, in the last 2 minutes of the workshop, we get to the fun stuff. Better gender, nobody's gonna know what that means, right? So you want a label in there that actually gives your reader, your boss, your students, your whoever, a better idea of what that means. So you can add labels, and here's some code for adding labels. Use the label function, tell R which variable you want to label. So I want to label the sex variable, and it is in, use a $sign for in, the global data 2019 data set. This is the label I want to give it. I want to give age this label. I want to give better gender this label. I want to give believe in God this label. So I click that to run those labels, and then I've added the believe in God variable to my table, and I click this to get my new table. And I get this lovely table that's got better labels now. So it's got, you know, it did all the right stats, right? For the categorical variables, it's giving you frequencies and percentages. For the continuous variables, it's giving you means and medians and things that you need. So it's really nice, really fast. You don't have to go through all that formatting stuff that you would do with Microsoft Word. You can also divide it up and have different columns in your table. So you can see that I've kept age, better gender, and believe in God in my table. And then instead of a plus, I've added this horizontal line and added the sex variable. Everything else is about the same. I'm just going to show you what this does. You can see it now. It's got a column for male and a column for female and a column for overall. So now I've got different categories for males and females in my data set. If you're working with data, let's see, maybe I can show it in here too. Here we go. I don't know if you could see that on my other window, but now you can see it's got columns for males, females, and everyone. So if you're working with a data set and you have like an outcome variable, like maybe you're studying people who have diabetes and comparing them to people who don't, you can have diabetes and no diabetes as your categories, and then look at their characteristics by category. So, you know, I just gave a little more information here. One more thing, if you want to name this final category, this overall category, if you wanted to name it total instead of overall, you can fix that. you know, so now we've got total at the end there. Yeah, it's a really good table, I think. You all, if you're just starting to use R, you wouldn't know this, but R has been terrible at making tables until this package came along. And this is new. This is something that has only been out for 6 months or a little longer. Before that, it was a lot more work to make tables. So these are really good. Here's another way to here's a little exercise for you to try. So if you're going to take this file and turn it in for your certificate, here's where you would show me your code. So you just copy this code, add some variables to it, and run the code and see how it works. So that's what you'll do for this first exercise. I want to show a graph really quick because I love the graphs. So here's one of the graphs. It's really bright pink, but you know, it's a little bit of code and you get this really nice graph. You can do some very fancy graphs if you want. If you get all the way down to the bottom, I know people need to leave, so let's see if I can give you, I'll show you the very fanciest graph. There's the fanciest graph if you go through all of the instructions. So what this has, it has a density plot, it has a box plot, and it has a scatter plot all overlaid one upon the other. So you can see the distribution of the data. You can see where the median and the IQR are if you're working with the box plots. You can see where each person is in the data set. And so this is the distribution of age by male and female sex. So in this data set, there are more men that are kind of older, more women and are down here in the lower groups. So you can make some really, really nice graphics through R. And, you know, I know this looks like a lot of code, but it's all in here. And you can just, if you want to look at the graphs, you can just click and see some of these graphs and how to make them even better if you want. So that's it. I know we're 3 minutes over. I'm happy to stick around. I have an appointment with a student of mine in about 20 minutes, but I'm happy to stick around and answer individual questions until then. So I hope that you enjoyed this and that you love R like I do. And I look forward to seeing you on Twitter and seeing your Markdown files for the certificate and all that good stuff. Oh, yay, I'm glad, Jones. I love R too.
I thank you, Dr. Jenine, for taking our time to give us such a wonderful presentation. We definitely love R. Who would say he doesn't love R? I mean, who would say she doesn't love R? If you know you love R, can you put it right there in the chat? Just say, I love R. Like, let's hear this from you.
Violet is not convinced, but I will convince Violet someday.
Yeah, so Dr. Jenny, can you see the number of R? Can you see the number of I love R going up there? Yeah, like this is amazing.
Good. I'm glad. Submitting the participant form, let me share my other screen. So in here, there's a little, in this thing that you got, I'll put the link again in the chat. If you submit one of those files, you do a little bit of code and submit one of those files through this form right here. It just asks you for your name, your email address, and then you have to upload the file. So the link is in this set of instructions.
Okay, Violet says, maybe when I become a pro, I can use R. I can use love. Okay, well, you can say you like R for now. Dr. Jenny
Okay.
can share her R story because it's really not easy like that, you know. Some persons find it a bit difficult to transition from maybe other softwares to R, but it's possible. I'm
It
personally
is.
struggling.
When I first started learning statistics for about 10 years, I used SPSS. And then I just thought I wanted to learn R and I gave it a try and now I will never go back. Yes, go ahead and ask a question.
Okay. Yes, Musonda, the video, this presentation is being recorded. It's even streaming live on Facebook right now, and the recording will also be made available on our YouTube channel. So you just subscribe to Academic Hive on YouTube, and you get access to the recording.
Yeah, what is your question? I don't know how to pronounce your name. Udua?
Yeah, you pronounce it Udoak.
Is that okay? I feel bad, but I don't know how to pronounce names. Do we need to memorize the code? No, because you can Google whatever you need. There is a lot of code out there on Google. You will find if you start to use R that you get to know things really well that you use all the time. But things you don't use all the time, I still look up stuff I'd say every single day I look up at least one thing on Google using Google. So you don't have to memorize, but you will, if you use it a lot, you'll start to know things like ggplot. I use ggplot almost every day. And so let's see if I can show you some ggplot code. Yeah, ggplot. So I use ggplot almost every day. So I know by heart now how to use it, and I don't have to look it up anymore. But other things I have to look up every time. How does the interpretation of the R results look like? I would say just like if you were doing it in SPSS, you would take a look at your results and you could write a sentence like, there were more male participants than female in the sample of 990 people surveyed in Nigeria in 2019. So I'm not sure if that's what you were meaning, but they would have the same sort of participation, same sort of interpretation as something that came out of SPSS or Excel or SAS, because you're doing the same stats and you're making the same graphs. You're just using a different kind of code to do it. R doesn't stand for anything. It's just R. It's just R. Yeah, so Jones, if you look on the GitHub on the link that I'll put it in the chat again. If you look on this link, there are two files. So one we looked at today and there's a second one. So you can choose one of those or do them both. And that's what you turn in. So if you finished the little code in here, like this, let's see, you try it. If you add code in here and get it to run, that would mean you finish this file and you could submit it to me and then you get the certificate. The results don't have to be written in our software. You can take your results out of here and paste them into Microsoft Word or whatever you need. Some people are really strong R programmers and they're able to link R to other kinds of software like Access. If you use R Markdown, you can hit this button here, knit, and it will knit to an HTML file if that's useful for you. But it'll only knit if all your code is complete, and I have some code that's not complete in here, so it's not going to show you today. But it'll knit to HTML or it'll knit to Microsoft Word, and then you'll get a file that shows all your graphs and all your tables and things in a HTML document or a Word document. You can definitely copy and paste this into Microsoft Word if you want to. I don't know if it'll come out quite as pretty, but you know, just another tool. You can design slides, all these slides. Let's see, you share these slides. If you go look at the slides, like here, these slides are designed in, these are all in R. So if you go through these slides, you can see all of this is done in an R Markdown file. So you can see these slides and use them in work. So yeah. What can I do if I want to use regression or correlation? So regression in R is, if it's a linear regression, the function to do that is an LM. It's for linear model, LM. And then you would put the, like the outcome and then a tilde and then predictor. I'm putting this in the chat for you. Predictor. And then data equals data name. So that's something that comes with base R. You don't need a package for that. So you could do, and then the logistic regression is GLM function. Let's see, structural equation modeling. I don't do structural equation modeling, so I don't know the code for it, but you can do it in R. I do have colleagues who use R for structural equation modeling. So that would be something I would have to look up. It's not something I use, but LM would be for linear regression. GLM would be for logistic regression. Godfred, please, when is the next meeting? I don't know. You have to ask Juliet.
Okay, so the next meeting would be a private consultation with Dr. Jenine. So if you have any more questions, you can just reach out to Jenine via our social media handle or her email. I'm sure she can drop that in chat.
Yeah, here's my email. So if you want to get more trainings that are sort of like this, let me give you another way to do it. Meetup. So there are these groups all over the world called Our Ladies, and I run the one that's in St. Louis. And if you go on Meetup, you can search for Our Ladies and then look under events, and you'll see workshops like this coming up. So Our Ladies St. Louis has one in time series coming up on April 13th. And these are free, they're always free. Anybody can come. And they're all over the world. So see, I don't know how to search Meetup, but maybe you can search Meetup. Oh, maybe this way, Our Ladies. And then you'll get all these different Our Ladies groups that are doing, this is a shiny applications are these web dashboards where you can work with data right in the browser. So then R can do that for you. It's got a lot of different stuff. So show more. There's all these different meetups. You can look for Our Ladies meetups. There might be other groups too, but I don't know as much about those.
All right, thank you so much, Jenny. This is almost 1 minute to 9:15, and you have another appointment, so we just want to call it a day here.
Okay. Yeah. So if you have more questions, you can hit me up on Twitter or in my email. Jean-Claude, I don't know if you can enter data exactly as you do in SPSS. I don't know that there's an interface for that, but what you can do is enter it in Excel and then open that file in R.
Right, so Jean-Claude, we hope you got the answer to your question. Thank you so much again, Jenny. Dr. Jenny, we really appreciate this workshop. So
Sure.
if you know you want to have, you want to get a certificate for this training as some.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, if you know you want to get
Everyone, it's great to meet you.
then you should complete the task and upload it on the form. So you get to meet, you'd get to have a certificate once you've completed that. So So put in some effort and learn R. R is a wonderful software for everyone in this era. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night from Nigeria. Good night.
Right.